Songs of Submission, Song 1, When God First Made the World. "18 years ago, in the mountains of southern Spain, I met Ronimund von Bissing. He was a British dude who had studied under Ouspensky and Bapak Subuh, and he moved with a group of Subuh meditators to the mountains of southern Spain, where I visited them. He was in his late 80s, and he was a man full of heart. Very lovely man, very, very calm and in internal peace. And he had written some books. One of the books that I've been carrying around with me for quite some time now is called Songs of Submission, or Songs of the Spirit. And only about a year or two ago, I really understood what he was talking about in these Songs of Submission. It's a sad fact of life that truth can only be expressed in words in the form of parables and metaphors and similes, not directly. It's really weird. There's first an intellectual understanding, which is not really an understanding at all. And once you're in the same state of consciousness, then you can suddenly understand it. And for some reason, for some people, reading these things can prepare the way to getting into that stage of consciousness. It's not a guarantee, but my guess is it's better to read that stuff than not to read it. And at some point, the coin will drop. It will make clink, and you think, my God, that's what he meant or she meant. Now I get it. So I hope you will have this aha experience with this parable. The first Song of Submission by Ronimund von Bissing, When God First Made the World. When God first made the world, he gave man the way to himself. The world was to be a passing place for man, as though in growing up he had to go on a journey, leaving his father's house and traveling through many lands before returning again to his father's house, stronger by the experience and having fulfilled a task. The love of the son for his father would lead him safely back in due season, and this love would protect him from enmeshment in the places he would pass through. But for all men this was not so. Once separated from their father's house, as they traveled into strange lands, they became, as it were, entranced. They forgot that their true home was elsewhere, and that in truth they were as strangers in the strange lands. They dawdled in the bazaars, buying and selling. They began to amass great quantities of goods, which, had they thought of it, they would have known they could never wish carry home with them. Forgetting their origin and their nature, they entered into the hopes and fears of the peoples of these strange lands, and believed that their place was there. At first, these other people seemed strange to them, but soon they felt part of them too and took to their hopes and their fears, their loves and hates. Soon they too were strutting and setting themselves up as somebody. Since everybody else did too, it seemed natural. These others whom they met were indeed in the same plight as themselves. They had come from the same house of the same father, were journeying in the same way and for the same reason, and should return in due season to the same end. But many had stayed already a long time. Many had totally lost their remembrance they had had at the start. Many were like streams that wander from the main river and lose themselves among the marshes. It was such particularly who buttonholed newcomers and passionately tried to infect them with the sickness from which they were suffering. A few there were who walked through the marketplace coolly, freely, smiling to adjust themselves as well as they could to the strange ways for the short time they would be there. Some from seeing them would remember the truth about themselves, and they too would then smile and were enjoying, would look forward to their time of return. Others would find the freedom of such offensive as though an insult to themselves, and would vomit their anger at them in their kind, and dig themselves the deeper into the place they had come to, until in truth they were a part of it. So the place that God created for man became for him not a journeying place on the passage from and to his Father, but his graveyard instead. God is spirit and his children spirit, but the world God made of things. And when they entered it, because they had been given things as accessories to help them, themselves became things. Given a body as a coat to warm themselves in the cold, they became that body and believed only in it. Given appetite to guide them in maintaining their body, they sought nothing more than to satisfy that, and to excess. Given pleasure in all that was beneficial for them, they sought only the pleasure, so that that became the end in itself. Given mind to serve them, they became its slave. In this way, they came to disease of body, disease of feeling, diseases of mind. Unhappiness and despair came to them, for in giving pleasure to them in what was right, God had also, to guide them against wrong, provided that unhappiness and misfortune should flow from following the wrong. But instead of understanding that their condition was indeed the proof of God's mercy, in warning them and guiding them away from what was hurtful for them, they dug themselves under with pride and cursed God, or denied him, or turned away their faces. And then the voice of God was heard in the valley of lamentation and through the delirium of mankind. For the spirit within man remained, and it was still of the same nature as God. God called to men and sent his power among men. He did not counsel or command. He called as a father to his children who had forgotten him. He offered them of himself, if they would open their souls to him. And in opening their souls to him, they found the way out of the abyss. The delirium of their fever passed. Happiness came upon them, and they lost the dread of leaving that place, knowing that when they would be released, they would be going home.